Welcome to Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant podcast. These are the stories of those who have received, given, and who are waiting for the gift of life, organ transplantation. Now here's your host and heart and kidney recipient, BJ Odom.
Welcome to the Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant podcast, where we explore the extraordinary world of organ transplantation. I'm your host, BJ Odom. Each week we share inspiring stories and we'll introduce you to remarkable individuals sharing their own transplant stories. Be sure to support us by leaving a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. And of course, subscribe, Apple, Spotify, you know the drill. Also, if you have a transplant story that you'd like to share, we would just love to hear from you. Our email address is giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. Again, giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. You can also send all your comments right there to that email address. And don't forget to connect with us on Facebook at Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast. And of course, you can also share this with all your friends and let them know a little bit more about the world of transplantation. And welcome to episode 40. If you remember last week in episode 39, we met Sue Green, the author of Don't Call My Liver Fat, Liver Transplant 101. Last week, we shared Sue's amazing journey of receiving the gift of life, a liver transplant from her half-sister, Christina Metcalf. Today, we get to introduce you to Christina, the extraordinary living donor behind Sue's extraordinary second chance at life. In this heartfelt episode, Christina shares her deeply personal and selfless decision to donate a part of her liver. From the moment she knew what she was going to do, through the testing, to the day of surgery, and her inspiring recovery. Christina's story is a testament to courage, love, and the power of family. So let's get things started by learning just a little bit more about Christina.
Well, I am a writer by trade, and some of the things that I live in Tarpon Springs, Florida. I donated to my half-sister. I donated my liver to my half-sister. She and I had not spoken for 30 years prior to me stepping up as a donor. We share a father. She was what I call from the first batch of kids. I was from the second batch of kids. So we didn't really grow up together. Mm-hmm. Today, like I said, I live in Tarpon Springs, Florida. I have 2 bonus children and 2 sons. So we have a busy household. The 2 oldest are actually out of the house, but spend a lot of time traveling back and forth to see them. And that's pretty much it.
Oh, that's cool to find out that you're a writer. I may have some questions for you after this interview. Because just a quick story of me. I at birth had heart problems, and my parents were told that I should never live past my teens. I went on to have an experimental surgery when I was 14 years old that continued my life. Then I had bypass surgery when I was like 45. And then by 50 years old, because of the original surgery and the way it was done, my heart was just worn out. And I, went on to have a heart transplant and then a kidney transplant because of all the lovely drugs you get to take for the transplant. So,
of course,
everybody says to me, you should write a book. And I says, yeah, I don't know how to write a book. But if I could ever find a ghostwriter, I might have found one here. I don't know.
Yes, actually, I do ghostwriting as well, as a matter of fact.
And I would I would tell you my story and even give you credit for it. I'll tell you. Because everybody, I don't know how many people I've talked to. Man, you should write a book. But
absolutely.
Let's get to Christina's book right now, because we're going to talk about, your liver donation. Maybe people don't know this. I know people in the organ transplant world do. That 2 of the organs that you can transplant a living donor with is obviously a kidney. Talked to many kidney donors on this program, but you will be the very first living liver transplant donor. So I appreciate you for coming on.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yes, that's very important. Prior to me doing this, I had no idea you could give a portion of your liver. I guess I must have been asleep during that part of anatomy class or something. I don't know, but I was really thrilled to hear that that was a possibility for Sue, because having a living liver donation, from what I understand, again, not a medical professional, but it increases your survival rates, generally speaking, and you're able to get one sooner if you can find someone who can actually, do it for you, as opposed to like a stranger coming forward. But if you can line someone up, it improves your chances of receiving a liver sooner than being part of that. I'm not sure if it's 13,000 people, I think, that are currently waiting a liver. I think something like that last time I checked.
And the numbers just keep growing and growing and growing, it seems. And,
and I think they will continue to, yeah.
And hopefully medical science, I know they're trying, who knows what tomorrow will bring. Because like I said, I was a gentleman my parents were told I'd never live past 13, 14, or 15. And my next birthday, I'm going to be 70. So that's the way the medical world works. There are things that they are discovering every day. But now I know that you said you were kind of, away because there was two different families, even though you have the same father, and you didn't communicate a lot. So how did the story begin? How did you find out Sue needed a liver?
Well, strangely enough, as I mentioned before, I have two bonus children. So when I married my current husband, he had two children before we were married, obviously. And that kind of made me start thinking about my father's first family. He had gotten a divorce. The children were young adults at the time, for the most part. And I think Sue was somewhere about 15 or so when it happened. And by the time I came along, she was about 17, I think. But it made me, having these bonus children, I started thinking about blended families. And like I said, I hadn't spoken to my half siblings, and there were 6 of them total at the time. I decided to reach out to the ones I could find on Facebook, because I hadn't spoken to them in 30 years, since my father's funeral. And I was 18 at the time. So even if we had spoken, I'm sure it wasn't any kind of deep conversation of any kind. They were older than I was, and I wasn't on the same sort of wavelength, I think, at the age of 18 as a college freshman as they would have been, in their 30s. So that's what made me think about it. I reached out to Sue. Ironically, when I reached out to her, this is before she had her medical problems, but when I reached out to her, I reintroduced myself and said, "Hey, I don't want you to think I want anything from you. I just have been thinking about you guys and thought I'd reach out. It's not like I need a kidney or anything."
That you actually said that to her before she even had her liver problems. Oh,
before she. I mean, irony at its best, I don't know, but a cosmic joke of some kind, I don't know. But I would later find out that was indeed sort of a reason why we did come together. But at that time, neither one of us knew. So that was about 2 years before she was diagnosed as, having the liver challenges that she did and needing a transplant. So once that so we were Facebook friends, and you know how that goes, where you see someone sort of post. She didn't post very much on Facebook, so I rarely saw her, but she'd occasionally, give me a thumbs up on one of my posts or something like that. But we really didn't reconnect in a Hallmark kind of way. Mm-hmm. It was all very from a distance, and I reconnected with 2 of my other siblings who also happened to be on Facebook. So there were a total of 3 of them on Facebook. And again, not a deep emotional conversation of any kind. Just for about 2 years, I would see them in the virtual world and they would see me. Okay. And then one day on my birthday, my 48th birthday, actually, I saw a post that Sue was tagged in. One of her friends, who I was not connected to in any way, shape, or form, but because she had tagged Sue, it appeared in my feed, said that her friend, who happened to be Sue, needed a liver transplant. And I thought, okay, this must be some sort of like jokes, in the same way that you receive an email from a Nigerian prince who, wants you to, wants to borrow $5 million or something until he comes into his inheritance.
Yes.
I couldn't figure out what the joke would be, but I felt like this can't possibly be true because I haven't heard anything like this, around the family grapevine or anything like that. No one reached out to me. I don't know why I thought they would, but I just heard that she needed a liver transplant and no one thought to contact me. And I thought, this has got to be a joke or some sort of a, malicious intent that someone has stolen her identity or something like that. So I reached out to our other sister, Ginny, and messaged her and said, is this real? Is this true? Because I didn't want to message Sue in case someone had hacked her account or something like that. I don't know what I was thinking, but that's what I was thinking. Some sort of cyber crime had occurred or something. I don't know. And I reached out to Ginny and said, is this true? And I expected her to come back and say, no, oh my goodness, what happened? But instead she said, no, unfortunately it is. And so I said, please give Sue my contact information and let her know that I'd be willing to donate. I need to know more, of course, because I didn't know anything about it, even that it was even possible that someone who was living could donate. So I wanted to know what she needed. And that day she called me, and that was the beginning of donating, the liver donation process.
Wow, that is a remarkable story. Now, so you decided, obviously, after you talked, and then how did you had to go through testing, obviously. So what was your next step, and when did you actually say, let me be tested?
Well, when I spoke to her on the phone, and it's funny, when I said that I hadn't spoken to her in 30 years. And when I spoke to her on the phone, it was because of her illness. I didn't realize this was a symptom, but she had a very stilted way of speaking. She spoke very slowly, very deliberately. If I asked a question, there seemed like there was an indefinite pause between her answer. And being the insecure person I was in our relationship, I was sitting there thinking, is she angry with me? When I was 18, did I say something terrible to her? I immediately thought it was me. It never occurred to me that this was her illness. And later she told me that because of the ammonia buildup in her brain, processing was very slow for her. It took a very long time for her to get the words that she needed out. So once she told me that, and I realized that it wasn't just something, I mean, I laugh now and we laugh at it because it's so silly that I would even think that she would even be considering that, but I did. And so it was about that time when she explained the process of how I'd have to go through testing and all that. And I told her I would talk to my husband but as I'm on the phone with her, I'm kind of like nodding at him and he's nodding at me. And I said, you know what, sign me up for the testing. We'll see where it goes from there. And I did that because all I could think of was our Father. And I thought, there were a lot of, I'll save the dirty laundry of our family secrets, but there were a lot of conversations that should have occurred that never did occur. And he was a very old school man who, didn't share his feelings and things like that. And I think when he passed away from lung cancer, he had a lot of regrets. And so I kind of saw this as a way to come full circle and to help our family heal. So I said that I would do it right away. And then we just had to schedule the testing. And she put me in contact with the University of Pittsburgh, which is where she had chosen to have her surgery. I was in Florida, and am in Florida. So I had a conversation with the nurse assistant. They provide you with someone to answer all of your questions, no matter what stage in the process that you're in, as far as the donation stage is concerned. They will spend as much time talking to you about the process as you want until you feel comfortable. But the one thing that they did tell me was, once you go down the road to be tested, because it's a 2-day long process of being tested, not just physically, but mentally as well. And they have a whole rash of tests that they do, not just blood tests, but I actually had to get on a treadmill, and they had to test my heart to make sure that it was responding appropriately to exercise and that it was heating up and cooling down the way that it should. And a whole bunch of other tests that they put you through. So the one thing that they tell you is, once you say yes, sign me up for testing, I'm coming in, they stop the process with any other transplant donors that have stepped forward. So you can change your mind at any time, up to the point that they administer anesthesia. That's always what they say to you.
Yeah, that's what I always hear with kidneys now. Like I said, you're my first liver. So yes, I'm quite interested in this process because I'm feeling it might be a little bit different, but they do the same thing with kidneys, I know. But I don't know if they stop that. They can't get any other ones, but I know, that you can, until anesthesia hits your body, you can back out at any time. I do realize that. That's
you can.
That's with a kidney also, yes. And a liver.
Yes. So, they tell you this, and they want to make sure that the donor, especially if you know the donor, if you're just coming forward and you're doing a donation for someone, I forget the terminology for that. When you come forward and you just say, I want to give my kidney or my liver to anyone who needs it?
I know.
Undirected.
And I don't know what the word is, but I also know that, but yeah, I'm lost now too on what you're trying to say. But
I think it's something non-directed. That's it. It's non-directed. So if you're non-directed, they don't worry about anyone putting pressure on you necessarily. But if you do know the person that you are donating to, they are very careful to ask you over and over again, is anyone pressuring you? Is anyone trying to talk you out of it? Is anyone trying to talk you into it? Have you received money for this exchange? There's a host of questions that they ask you to make sure that you are not feeling the pressure of donating to someone you know.
Yeah, now that I know that they do that with the kidneys also. So we're matching here now.
Right, and for good reason. So Sue and I both went up to UPMC at the exact same time so that we could spend a little time together and get to know one another. Because 30 years is a long time.
No kidding.
A long time. So we both had to go through rigorous testing to make sure that she was well enough to receive and that I was well enough to give. And the one thing that they said to me that stuck out to me, and so we started the process, to answer your question a million years ago, we started the process in July, or at least I started the process in July. And by the time we went up for testing, it was October. So we went up for testing, and we are now in COVID days. It's October of 2020. 2021, I guess, 2021. Sorry. So, we had to go up masked. We had to be careful of all of those protocols that were in place. And this was the early days of COVID. So that meant that getting tested for COVID was something that was pretty much relegated to healthcare workers only. There were long lines. It was very difficult to get tested. So we showed up and they took our temperatures before they let us in the building and, hit all those protocols. But, we were not allowed to bring an entourage with us. We had to, they really were very careful about who they let in at the time for good reason. So we had our testing done. Both of us had about a day and a half to 2 days worth of testing. And like I said, they tested everything from doing lots of blood work to asking me questions about my mental health, to asking questions about the pharmacology, what drugs do you take, what supplements do you take, all of that. And the one thing they cautioned me when we were going through this process is they said, you're a little bit heavy and you may have fatty liver. And they said it in the most polite way, But I was so incensed that they would call my liver fat. I just thought, what's a little cellulite? What does it matter? It shouldn't matter at all if my liver's a little fluffy. And that was my first education in finding out what fatty liver was. I had no idea that it was not a little cellulite. It was not a little harmless fluffiness. It was not a little extra weight. It was the possibility. They were concerned about the possibility of scar tissue building up on the liver.
Mm-hmm.
And, shameless plug for my sister's book, but they could certainly, if you want to know the medical the medical part of it, you can read her book, or you can Google fatty liver. I'm not a healthcare provider. I don't know a lot of that, but I know that due to things that we eat these days, fatty liver is non-alcohol caused scarring on the liver.
And I learned a lot about livers last week through her, because, of course, obviously she was a nurse, and she has gone through this, and she wrote the book. By the way, we'll give that a plug. Don't Call My Liver Fat, Liver Transplant 101. We'll do that. And I thought she was quite interesting last week. And now we're going to, now we're getting on the other side, which is kind of cool, because we're doing these back-to-back weeks. She was last week, and you are now this week. So did you help her write the book, since you are an author, or did she do it all on her own?
Well, we started off writing a book together, a sort of she said kind of commentary. But we have very different styles. And I think ultimately she had a different vision for the book. I had a different vision for the kind of book I wanted to write. I wanted to do sort of a humorous poking fun at the whole process. Not that it's not, I don't mean that it's a humorous process. It's a terrible process, a terrible thing for someone to go through as far as the disease side of it. But I wanted to sort of poke fun at the things that you have to go through as a donor, that, the uncomfortable medical funny testing and things like that, the questions that you get asked, the comment, about me thinking that my liver was just a little pudgy, those kind of things. And it ultimately didn't really jive with what she was doing as far as trying to educate people on the seriousness. And not that my humorous attempt is trying to, play that down. By no means is that. We just have very different writing styles. I tend to be sort of a self-deprecating, poking fun at things. And she obviously comes from a very serious healthcare background. So, we decided to part ways, and she wrote her book to educate people on really the increased dangers, because, and I'll be the first to admit, prior to knowing Sue, I had sort of a bias, and I'm embarrassed to admit this right now, but I had a bias when I heard someone had liver problems. My first thought, if they were an adult, was that they had sort of self-sabotaged their own health.
Yes.
That through drinking or some sort of negligent care of themselves, that they had brought it upon themselves. And that's it. Now I look back, and again, I'm sorry to admit this. I'm embarrassed to admit, I should say. I'm only admitting it because there are probably people out there who share my same view on things if they don't know anyone who's been touched by this fatty liver illness.
Well, just as myself as a stand-up, because I did stand-up comedy for a while, and, I would talk about my transplants and my heart transplant and my kidney transplant. And I had this, because I did comedy magic in the clubs, and I could make this beer bottle disappear. So the way I would start it is I would pull it up and I go, yeah, all I need now is a liver transplant. And I would, I would, take a drink out of the bottle. And then I'd say, no, this is not good for me, so let me make it disappear, and blah, blah, blah. The magical illusion took place after that. But that was always kind of my belief too. Most people if you need if you need a liver, you must have been a drunk, or you must have been drinking all your life. And that's totally wrong.
And that's really, I think, that's part of the PR that has to occur right now to help bring more liver donors forward, is that there is a prejudice against people who need livers. And a lot of it is not alcohol related. And not that those people, if it is alcohol related, not that they don't deserve help as well. I mean, that's a disease and an illness as others are. But so many, because of the things that we're eating, the drugs that we're ingesting, and I mean legal drugs too, the diet sweeteners and things like that are being used or have been used in the past. They're causing some very, very serious damage to livers, and liver disease is on the increase, unfortunately. And so it's really important to bring a call to action for people to consider liver donation. And that's part of the reason that I'm here today. I want to get that message out.
Because like I said, during, this podcast and, as a transplant patient myself, I've, talked to many, people that have donated kidneys, but this is kind of a new twist, and I like it. And I'm glad we're doing this because it is important and it is part of the world of transplantation are these liver transplants. And what's amazing, you can take a portion of the liver, put it in someone else, and it will grow. And then the one that you got cut on that made it smaller, it grows back to its normal size, I hear. So, and even your sister last week was telling me the liver is one of the most amazing organs that we have in our body because it's not well understood and it does amazing things.
Absolutely. And it grows back freakishly fast too. That's the other thing. It doesn't take years and years for your liver to regenerate. It does it in a matter of weeks. So it's really incredible.
So you've went through the process to be tested, and the tests are now done. And then you find out you can be a donor. Now, let me ask you this, because I noticed a little while back, you said, yeah, my husband was looking at me as I was talking about, making the donation possibly. So what was his thoughts when you told him, yes, I want to do this?
Well, we were newly married. We had been married for about 1.5 years at that point. But we had known each other for years and years and years. So he knew me pretty well. But I will share that I sort of said yes before officially talking to him. He knew what I was doing, and he was there in the room. And that's why I say I was nodding at him and he was nodding at me. But then after I got off the phone, I was like, I guess I should have talked to you about this. Should I, can I do this? Is this something you support? And he said, how could you not? And that was exactly the attitude that I had when I said yes, is that how could I not? Knowing she needs something that I have. And unfortunately, she, came down with this when at the age when all of her peer group were too old to help her. And that's really difficult. If you have a damaged liver at the age of 25, you probably have a whole host of people who are willing to get tested for you, willing and able to get tested. But as you age and your friends age and your relatives age, like all of her siblings, they were all around her age and they had all aged out of being an eligible donor. Cause I think it's like 52, although somebody with medical qualifications can fact check me on that. But, you get to a certain age and no matter how much you want to do it, the hospitals are really hesitant to take a liver from someone over a certain age.
Yeah, because, at that age, things are starting to go wrong with you also. And, so they're really leery to do things because they are concerned just as much about the donor as they are the recipient, because, they want to make sure the donor is going to be healthy after this also. So, yes. And that's why you go through all that testing. But what's amazing that I've heard from a lot of liver people, or not liver, but kidney people, is that the testing, when people are being tested to give them a possible kidney, their life was saved at the same time because maybe they couldn't donate that kidney, but they found something that was important to their health that they had a chance to get fixed. And I think that's an amazing part of the process too. It can save, can save lives.
Oh, absolutely. Because it is such a thorough test, such a thorough battery of tests that they put you through, that once you get to the other side, they've either found something, like you said, that could save your life, or you come out thinking, wow, I'm in really good shape. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you feel really secure because they do so many different tests and so many different systems. They're not just testing your liver, as I mentioned before. They're also testing your heart and different components of your blood and things like that. So you really come out with the most thorough battery of tests I've ever had in my lifetime,
Okay.
bar none.
So
Absolutely.
we're getting the test over with. We're now possibly, looking at some dates of when we might be able to do this surgery. Did you ever have Did you ever have that moment, or was there anywhere in the process where you said, maybe I shouldn't do this?
Well, the one thing I do want to point out, after you get your test done, though, they still have to present. It's very much like a Grey's Anatomy episode, at least I imagine it in my head, or something like that, where they have a whole board who comes together and decides whether you and your recipient are a good surgery.
Yes.
So there's still that one more step. So we went through that as well. But to answer your question, did I ever have a moment where I thought, maybe I shouldn't do this? The only time I came remotely close to it was after the testing, and because up until that point, nobody really came up to me and voiced their opinions about what I was about to do, because I assume they probably thought, well, the testing could fail and then this won't happen anyway, so why should we bother giving our views on things until we know that their surgery is set? So once my surgery was set, my former mother-in-law told my ex-husband, who I'm still very friendly with, I'm concerned about her doing this because of her sons. Because my sons, I think, let's see if I can do some math, they were 13 at the time, 12 or 13. And so they weren't little bitty guys, but they were still young. And she was concerned that if something happened to me, these boys wouldn't have a mother. And, that gave me a little bit of pause, because up until that time, my brain only allowed me to think of the positive. I was totally focused on, if I'm going to do something like this, like donating my organ, I had faith that God was not going to let anything terrible happen to me, because I was doing this for a good reason. And it wasn't until I heard what she had said, and she meant it in the nicest of ways. She didn't mean any harm by it or anything like that. But it wasn't until she said that I thought, well, that could happen. It's surgery. There's a possibility that something could happen. Something could go awry. But I decided to look at it the same way you would if you saw someone in front of you drowning. You would jump in without thinking, because that person's drowning. And Sue needed a liver. And if I wasn't going to provide it, she'd have to be on the wait list. And she had already told me, and I had done research myself, that wait list was very, very long. And while she was sick and dying, she was not dying fast enough to get pushed up that wait list.
Right.
And I'm not saying that to be callous. I'm saying that's simply the way, the doctors have to decide who is healthy enough to make it through the surgery, but still sick enough that they are at the top of that wait list.
And that's with that's with most organs too. And that's how it kind of works. Yes.
So just for a brief moment did I think, oh, geez. But I chose to push that out of my mind, because I was fairly certain that without the donation that I was bringing to the table, that she very likely would die. And there was no way that I could imagine that happening.
Okay, so now Christina and Sue are both at the hospital. It's the day. Take us through that.
Mm-hmm. So you have to come in very, very early, as with most surgeries. And we were together in the waiting room, and then they separated us. And at UPMC, you have two separate teams. So obviously you have someone working on the person who needs the liver, and you have someone who is donating the team who's working on the donated liver, because they have to be going at the same time. So you can't have one team working on both people. So they separated us. We went to our different places. So I can't speak to what she was doing over there, but I can walk you through. They took me back to a room, and they gave me something to make me comfortable. That was a direct quote, make me comfortable. And I thought, I'm not anxious. There's no reason for me to need something to be comfortable. And I kept waiting for them to put a mask on my face, because I had very little surgery experience up until that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I expected a mask. Hollywood always shows a mask going. So I'm waiting for the mask, waiting for the mask. They come in to make me comfortable. And suddenly I'm like, wait, I'm feeling kind of, and that's all I remember.
I'm comfortable now.
So they tricked me. And there's no mask now. So if they come in and tell you they're going to make you feel comfortable, they're getting you ready. Because of that, because I didn't really know I was going under at that time, when I woke up, I had no idea the surgery had been performed.
Oh, wow.
I know, it's silly. I mean, I just very naive, I guess, when it comes to surgeries. I hadn't had that many. And so I woke up, and I can only hope that I was in a room at that time, but I could have been in a hallway for all I know. And I was trying to figure out, I didn't see anyone around who could help me. I'm sure there were people right next to me. I just couldn't see them yet. I was still coming out of it very groggy, but I was so concerned. I didn't know whether the surgery had happened or not. I didn't feel badly. I didn't feel in pain. I didn't feel anything like that. So on my gurney, I decided to figure it out the only way I knew how, which was to flip up my hospital gown and look to see if I saw an incision. I can only hope that I was in my room at that time and there was no one else present, but I don't know. But so I felt great right after surgery. I didn't have any pain. They had told me that the incision was going to be like a reverse hockey stick, like an L shape, going down from my entire length of my torso, basically, and then making that hard right. And for whatever reason, maybe I have stretchy skin, I don't know, they only did an incision that is straight down, but much, much smaller than I expected it to be. Of course, my swimsuit model career is over now, but, but again, very little pain. Didn't have too many complications when I was in the hospital. They get you up and walking very quickly. I think they gave me that night to sleep off the anesthesia, but the very next day they had me up and walking. They had normal hospital protocols, where you have to blow into the atomizer or whatever that thing's called to keep your lungs clear. When you donate a liver, they take your gallbladder too, because your gallbladder is sitting right on top of your liver and there's no way to salvage a gallbladder. So some people do have some issues with fatty foods afterwards. Had any issues like that? I'm very fortunate. My recovery was very quick. Like I said, I donated, and she, received a liver at the very beginning of COVID. And so there were a lot of things that made that complicated. We couldn't have extra family members. We were allowed to only have one person assigned to us. And that person was supposed to come and go minimally. They were not supposed to be back and forth and going out to restaurants and all the other things. And we were in Pittsburgh at the time, so most of the restaurants were closed anyway for anything other than takeout. So it's a very complex time to go through the whole process, but you don't really get to choose those kind of things.
I know it was complex for the world, let alone, being in the
Yes.
hospital and, donating a liver and having a half sister receiving the liver. I can only imagine how stressful that was for you all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, poor Sue ended up with COVID after all was said and done.
Yeah, I guess she had kind of a rough recovery the way she was talking to me, but it sounds like things are getting better and she's doing good. So praise God for that. Okay,
Yes,
so
absolutely.
now the surgery is over and you've healed, and it was a relatively, good healing for you. Because as you said, she was your half sister, kind of like two families, because, your father remarried and then, you came along with your family. So how has that changed the dynamics between the two of you after the surgery? Because obviously there is some kind of bond there that came with this whole ordeal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We're still getting to know each other. But and I say we're getting to know each other because we both live very far away from one another. She came down here for a little bit when we were working on the book together, and that was really nice because I felt like I was finally getting to, reconnect and whatnot, because we were in the same town for a couple of months. So I'm just really thankful that we have, that we're going through this. I hate this word, but we're going through this journey, of rediscovery and all that, because there were a lot of things, me being the age that I was, I didn't understand a lot of the background, the familial stories that happened before I was on the scene. And so we're just, we're just reestablishing a relationship, and it's been nice.
Good deal. So what would you say to others that are thinking maybe of giving the gift of life to either a kidney or a liver where you can be a living donor?
Mm-hmm. It is such a worthwhile opportunity. And our bodies are so amazing. They've been doing these transplants for, I think since, I don't even want to, I want to say something like 81 or something. It's been a very long time, right?
And I think the first
Livers?
maybe kidney or something came along. I think like it was 55. There was some of the first organ transplants.
Mm-hmm. I think they were doing kidneys before they were doing livers.
Yes.
I think. But, these hospitals they have it down to a science. And I can't say enough great things about UPMC specifically, University of Pittsburgh. They had someone assigned to me, and it was the same person, by the way, from the very beginning that I showed interest, all the way to, because you have to go for checkups a couple of years afterwards to make sure that everything is healing properly. So I've been with her for several years now. We just celebrated our 4th anniversary, our donation anniversary, I guess. And it's just been such a blessing to be able to do this. And the need is so great. And while it is major surgery, I don't want to play that down. It's really, I don't even have the words for it, which is sad for a writer, but to be able to help someone like that who is in such need, it's incredible. Even if you don't know the person, even if you do a non-directed donation. And sometimes I want to just put another plug in for this too. If you do know the person and you find out that you're unable to donate, you're still healthy, but it's just not a good match. Sometimes sizes of livers matter, or sometimes blood type matters. Sometimes they do a thing called a non-directed chain donation, where you might not be giving the liver to your loved one, but you're giving the liver to another loved one, someone else's loved one, and then you end up they arrange for somebody else to give a liver that then fits your loved one. So there are these non-directed chains that you can do it in. So even if you are turned down, but still healthy, I mean, if you're turned down for a health reason, obviously that wouldn't work. But if you're turned down because the match doesn't fit per se, there are other opportunities to still give the gift of life.
And
there's just such a need.
And they also do that with kidneys too, because I know a lot of people I've talked to have started either a donor chain. So I had one person that just came out of nowhere saying, I want to, woke up in the middle of the night. I want to donate a kidney. I don't care who gets it. I don't care the background. I don't care nothing. I have an extra kidney. I want to donate it. And so she started her own chain without even having it directed to anybody. And I think in her chain, they ended up helping like 9 people just by her one little donation started the whole chain for that. So yeah, amazing things happen there.
It really is amazing. And when you come forward to donate, we kind of went through the whole process, but the couple of things that I didn't mention, usually there is no cost to the donor. So you don't have to be concerned about financial. Usually that's covered by the recipient's health insurance. And if that recipient doesn't have health insurance that would cover the donor's costs, then a lot of times there are foundations through the hospital or other foundations that can help defer the costs. And they even will sometimes pay for your missed work. So if you're like, gee, I would really like to donate, but I can't miss the time, I won't get paid. There are resources out there. And the other thing that is great that they will do if you are interested, they will assign you a mentor or somebody who has been through the donation process already. And what you said reminded me when you talked about someone just waking up and deciding to donate a kidney. My mentor, Rebecca, is an amazing person. She did that twice. She donated a kidney and she donated part of her liver. Non-directed, doesn't know the people from Adam. She just wanted to give back. And so this mentor program allows you to ask someone who's gone through the process any question you want to ask them. You know, there's some questions you might be embarrassed to ask, or you don't want a doctor or nurse to hear it, or maybe you don't even want the medical jargon behind it. You just want to know, what should I pack when I'm in the hospital? What clothing should I pack? You know, what makes sense? You can be in contact with someone who's gone through it. So there are so many resources to make this possible if it's something that you're considering.
Now, see, you informed me on something else, and I was going to ask you that, but I didn't know if you'd have the answer, and you answered it. You know, if you donated a liver down the road, let's say you had a child who needed a kidney, could you still donate that kidney too also then, huh? As far as what you know?
Yes, you can, assuming that you know, obviously it's healthy, your kidney is healthy, you can. You can donate both your liver and your kidney, and you can do either one. Like, it's not like doing one first precludes you from doing the other. You could be a liver donor first and then give a kidney, or a kidney donor first and then give part of your liver. So you can. The only thing you can't do is give your liver twice.
Once you gave a portion, that's it, huh?
That's it. They don't let you regenerate and keep doing that indefinitely.
Well, is there anything that I may have missed that you feel is important that you'd like to share with the audience here today?
I mean, I just appreciate you bringing all this to light and helping people understand, because I think until you're touched by it, you know, before Sue, I checked the little box on my license that said, yeah, I'll be an organ donor after I'm deceased. Who cares? You know, I'm not going to need them. But I never realized the need, first of all, the huge need for donations. And I never realized that how much help live donations can be, like a kidney or a liver. From what I understand, not only are there fewer complications with them, but obviously, like we talked about earlier, you can get them to a person who needs them before that person is at the very top of the list. So if someone has found out, you know, that they're probably not going to get one for several years, you know, a live donor is always a possibility. And so I pay a lot more attention now than I used to the need out there. So I just really appreciate what you're doing and getting that messaging out there, because until you're touched by it, you don't realize it. You think, oh, I'm a liver donor on my license. That's cool. But you don't realize that there are other opportunities and need for help. So thank you for what you're doing.
Well, I appreciate that. But kind of what you said too. I had one person who received a transplant that told me that their spouse had died a few years before they needed their transplant. And they were asked if she was, if they would like to donate the organs. And this person said, nah, I don't think so. Let's let them rest in peace. And then needed 2 years later an organ and said, boy, if I could only have those 2 years back and know what I know today, I would have made a totally different decision. And I think that resonated with me pretty strongly also. It's like, until it affects you, you don't think about it. So just think what it might be if you need an organ in another 4 or 5 years, So
or your child needs an organ or any of that. Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate you for coming on. And let me see, I know you're an author, and it doesn't have to be about, kidneys and hearts and transplants, but do you have anything new out on the market that you'd like to promote before we let you go?
I do. Books? I appreciate that. I just published a book, actually. It's called The Glinda Principle, as in Glinda from the Wizard of Oz. And it's a self-empowerment book for women, because we get to a certain age and a lot of us feel stuck and we're not sure where to go. We've gone to a certain part of our career, or our family is getting older and they don't need us in quite the same way. And we're just looking for other opportunities and we want to follow our dreams. And the Glinda Principle kind of gives you a path on how to do that and how to feel. I call it rediscovering the magic within, because we all have that magic inside of us, and it really improves your life when you can start feeling it again.
And the name of the book is what again?
The Glinda Principle, and it's available on Amazon. Thank you for the shameless plug.
No problem. I've been in radio all my life. I know about those shameless plugs and how important they are. One thing, now that you said that it's a self-help book, I've got to say this. Is your family like a football family that was watching football over the weekend?
Oh, of course.
Did you see the Eagles game where, I forget what player it was, but he's over on the sidelines and he's reading a book, and it's a self-help book. And then, it was time for him to go back in. He closed the book, went right back out on the field again.
Oh man, no, I did not see that part of it. And my husband's a Packers fan, but boy, I would have stood and clapped for the reading of a book part. Yeah, wow.
And of course, later in the game, they actually found out the name of the book, and they actually mentioned it. And I'm thinking that book probably sold 1,000 copies after that football game.
No doubt. It was The Glinda Principle by Christina Metcalf.
Go out and buy it today wherever you buy your favorite books. Well, Christina, I appreciate you so much for coming on the podcast, and you've been entertaining and informative, so I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it very much.
Again, thank you very much, Christina Metcalf, for sharing your story with us on The Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast. Please join us again next week for a new heartfelt episode. And if you have a transplant story you'd like to share with our audience, please email us at giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's giftoflifepodcast@gmail.com. Also, follow us on Facebook, Gift of Life, the Organ Transplant Podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it on social media and with your friends and anyone interested in the world of organ transplants. Until next time, I'm BJ Odom. Thank you so much for being a part of our journey and reminding us all to appreciate each and every day and to treasure the extraordinary gift of life.